Hey, right on, team. We are back. It's Monday morning. We're going to get into some more. We got a lot on our plate this week. I'm super excited. We're going to kick off this Monday morning here with Spelljammer Combat and Exploration artwork. And so let me check my signal here. I'll get into my intro spiel here in a minute. So I want to check my signal, make sure I'm coming through okay. So if you're checking this out in the future, I've got about maybe a minute or two of intro. So if you want to hit fast forward to get into the meat of production, I'll see you on the other side of, I guess, what they call a bump. I don't know. We'll see if that's what we're actually doing here or not. Mic check 1, 2, 3. If that's what, all right. Sounding. Wow, we're loud today. Is that? Oh, that's just okay. There's nothing weird going on. All is right in the world. We are good. Let's see. So let me go ahead and kick into my intro here, and then we'll get to work. So my name is Phil Kearney. Hey. I create role-playing games. I publish them on. I illustrate them and then I publish them online. So I've been focusing my attention on Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition for the past 5 years. There are a slew of links in the description down below that point to other works that I've already produced that are published on the DMsGuild. They all have extensive free previews, so you can check out the content that I created before you purchase it if you were inspired to do so. If you're here for artwork, in those samples down below, there's probably about 150 different illustrations of work that I've previously produced, so you can check that stuff out. If you're here for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition game design, or if you're interested as a player, then the stuff I make is made for both DMs and players to use, and I run campaigns from level 1 to 20 in about 200 hours. So most of the stuff that I've published to date is either something that I've actively needed for one of my previous campaigns that I built out into something that I thought was worth sharing with other people, or it's stuff that I know that is a gap inside of 5e that when I build it is going that I also will be using. It's just a matter of, did I need it first or second? So anyway, so if you think that stuff is cool, consider making a purchase to help encourage similar bad behavior in the future. Otherwise, I've just posted that I'm live on Twitter, X, so if you're part of that platform, you can follow me at Twitter, at Phil Kearney as well. I always publish when I'm live and occasionally post artwork, updates of what we're doing. I've got some artwork updates happening later on today, so you can follow me on Twitter to catch some artwork there as well. Best way to support the channel, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. We are pushing to 500 subscribers, which is the first major goalpost that we have inside of this channel. So thanks a lot for everyone that's sticking around, checking it out, and more so even for those that come back or catch up with me in chat. You're more than welcome to be here with me. So let's see. What do I say? I create role-playing games. I illustrate them, and then I publish them online. So what does that mean? We come up with an idea. Like I was saying, we come up with an idea. We test it. If it turns out well, we'll type up the words. I'll hire an editor to kick it out to make sure it's actually doing what we need it to do. When it comes back, we can then drop the text into a layout program like this. And as we drop in the text and break it down into digestible chunks of information, all these holes pop up in the text where we can then plan on inserting artwork into for us to have a fully fleshed out project. And when it is done, once we have all the text laid out, like here on this page of exploration, we can extract this page as a PDF document that we can then drop into Photoshop here, and then we can start putting illustrations directly on the page. When we're done with that, we extract all the images and we put them back into the document, and then we seal it into a PDF, and then we publish it online with an extensive free preview for you guys to check out what it is that we've been building to decide if it's right for your campaign to purchase. So this is what we're working on. This is the book cover. We created this back around episode 40 of this playtest of this playlist stream, and looks like where are we at? We're at currently episode 200 and is that right? 250? Holy Hannah! No, we're higher than that. We're 258. I pressed the wrong button. I'll fix it on the other side. But yeah, we're at episode 258 now. Holy crap! We've been doing this for about 15 months here on stream, and we had about Well, honestly, there's about a year and a half of development of other mechanics that fed into this system. So you'll be seeing the rest of those efforts later on, probably in a Kickstarter in 2024, 2025. But right now we are looking at illustrating illustrations for spherical gravity and gravity fields. People that already know Spelljammer are familiar with the concept of spherical gravity, which is normal gravity that we experience being pulled to a planet. And then there's a gravity field or a gravity plane. A gravity plane is when you're smaller than 10 miles in size, you're going to have a plane that cuts through the middle of the object as opposed to being spherical, because if you're smaller than 10 miles, generally, Spelljammer always has exceptions, but the general physics that we have is if you're smaller than 10 miles in size, then you're going to have a plane bisecting the thickest part of whatever that object is. If it's 10 miles or larger, then it's big enough to be able to have spherical gravity where you can walk all the way around like that. So we're looking at gravity fields here depicted as rings around a planet. These individual rocks and chunks in the orbit around a planet, if they're smaller than 10 miles in size themselves, will naturally form a field of coinciding linked gravity planes that becomes just an extended plane that is in rotation around this planet. And you can look at it from two ways, of either being on the top or the bottom of this ring, or you can look at the planet itself as down, so that you can be facing head up towards the planet or looking down at the planet. And so the rings form because there's gaps between each one of them. And so this empty space that we have going here between each ring can have an up and a down, up and a down, up and a down, up and a down, where you can't see, where you can look up and see the bottom of the next plane. I think I like the overall plane effect of gravity. And so I like to address the idea that you could have both, but maybe I only need to address the more obvious one, and so that the reader can be smarter than me. And well, we could do this ring by ring by ring gravity if we wanted to instead, and which is what we have over here. But I'm wondering if that's too obtuse for the amount of information, for the amount of space that we provided with the information that's there for us to properly, to really illustrate that. We're in the process of building that. Over on the left-hand column, we're talking about traveling within spherical gravity, escape times, as well as overland distance in a spelljamming ship, which I absolutely want to keep. So I think what I want to do right now, this is going to end up being a map of Toril with traveling within the sphere of a planet doesn't impede the movement of spelljamming ships, but a ship moving too fast can fly past its destination during one round of movement. The range listed in the detailed column in the visibility tables above provides the maximum speed a ship can travel to a destination and notice its approach without overshooting it. For example, the city of Waterdeep occupies a 10-mile space. The maximum speed a ship, because Waterdeep is about the surrounding area around, like the city itself, is 1.5 miles, so it's already larger than a mile. But then the surrounding provinces fill in a 10-mile space, and some of the farms that support Waterdeep are as far out as 50 miles away. So the city of Waterdeep occupies a 10-mile space. The maximum speed a ship can move across Toril towards it without overshooting it is 100 miles per round, because each square in 100 miles per round of movement is going to put each square at 1 mile, at 10 mile spaces. So if I'm going at 100 miles per hour, I have an opportunity to actually stop during combat or during a round of movement at 10 mile intervals. And since Waterdeep fills one of those 10 mile squares, you'll see it coming if you're moving at most 100 miles per round. Without overshooting it is 100 miles per round, or 1,000 miles per minute. A ship traveling across Faerun from Anne to Waterdeep can do so in 2 minutes at this speed, because Am is about, I think, 1,700 miles away. So the plan currently is bottom here. Junga junga pa pa So if we have buttons, if Waterdeep is here along the actually this is Moonshay. If Waterdeep is here on the Sword Coast, and this is the Sea of Fallen Stars down here, Am is over here. So you can see 1, 2 squares of movement. One square, 2 squares. It's going to take 2 squares of movement at 1,000 miles squares. So you're going from 1 square to another. We'll need to make sure that Am is properly sitting inside the space that we're building. So let's scooch that over like that. So that Am is inside its own 1,000 miles square. So it's something like that. This is the idea that we're working with anyway. So right now we're trying to. This is why we get paid the big bucks, because we create. What was it? It's it was Trent Kanega who had said that. At least I heard him say it. He was the first person for me to hear it heard it be said that illustrators are problem solvers that create visual representations of fantasy ideas in one's mind, we visualize imagination, and the problem is that no one can. So we solve the problem of being able to visualize your imagination by illustrating it. So what we're doing right now is we are solving the problem of how to depict movement from Am to Waterdeep in 2 minutes as a motion. So we already have all the language for arrows with the fade effect, where it's dark at the front and then grayed out at the back end, and we have these little movement monikers that we use for your starting point, like the semicircle to represent where your sphere was initially and where your ship ends at the end of it. So we're in the process of figuring out what kind of language do we want, because we haven't used an isometric map before. This is a pseudo meta space that we're kind of building here, which I am in favor of, but I think I can do this with less waste. I think that's going to be better, just upsizing that a bit so that it's better, so that the actual targets are filling a larger portion of the actual space that's being built here. So, for those frequent flyers that are keeping tabs, we finished that piece that we were working on last week. Here's the final piece. I'll have this up on Twitter later on today. So if you guys want to take a look at this, follow me on Twitter at Phil Kearney, and I will drop this entire page with the dressing and the charts. But this is how it ended up. So I'm pretty happy with the overall effect here. That's super cool. Hey, timely timer. We have a 20-minute timer that we have set here to make sure I don't get stuck on any particular topic for too long. So this thing will pop every 20 minutes, which is how I make sure I can get out of here and go to work on time. So we have about an hour? Yeah, we got about 80 minutes. So a lot of this exploration chapter is already done, because there's not a lot of graphics that are actually necessary in this one. Here's that massive visibility table. Here, I'll full screen this for people that want spoilers, since you'll be able to see all of this. This page will also be in the preview available once this publishes. So, but you can screenshot here if you want to, or pause your screen to see how the visibility chart works. And then here's the information about the chart itself. and how orrery scanning and detections actually work, how you can use the DCs for these detect ranges for using an orrery, the wild space orrery mounted into your ship as basically as a radar system to be able to detect things further away than you could with your naked eye. So this is the size of object and the distance that it is for the DC that you have. And if it's further than, say, 1,000, like if a human being is 1,000 miles away, they're 5 feet object size. If they're within 1,000 miles, it's a DC 28 to detect them. If they're 10,000 miles away, that roll is at disadvantage. So you can, if you're doing just a blind check, hey, what's out there? If you roll a 28, then your DM has the ability to provide any object size that you encounter, and you'll see it coming all the way down to something that fits inside the 5 foot square. That could be like a small size or a tiny size creature as well. It's just that if you're going to roll a 28 and it's within 1,000 miles, you can find the comatose body of a drifting pixie princess, for instance. You'd be able to pick that up. But if there's a pixie princess out there and you don't roll a DC 28, you won't notice the pixie. But the pixie may run into anyway, because that's your random encounter. So what this is doing is, when you're just peering into your orrery like Spock at his scanner, you're gonna make your check. And depending on what the DC is going to determine the size of object that you're going to be able to pick up randomly as you're basically like point crawling or hex crawling through space. So like, it's impossible to miss the central star in a system that you're inside of. It's right over there. You can't miss it. Thus the 1. Now, I love how smoothly this system scales from DC 1 to 28. I mean, there's technically a DC 31, right? That you could, the bounded accuracy curves up to 32, I believe. So this is falling well within the range of bounded accuracy. Noticing is with your naked eye. As you can see, it has significantly less range than what the orrery provides for you. And then if you notice something just like as a lookout, then you could also, depending on how far away it is, you can make out detailed. Like you can see somebody drifting in the void a mile away. They're a speck, but you can notice them. You have to wait until they get close to you to be able to check out the detail. And again, you can go 10 times the range. Like a DC 16 to notice a specific detail, like a badge or something on somebody's coat. 50 feet, not very difficult to do it. You could do it up to 500 feet away instead if you're going to roll with disadvantage. So when you're making rolls, you're going to roll both. You're going to roll 2 dice at the same time. One's going to be advantage, one's going to be a disadvantage. And you're going to take whatever the best roll is, and that's going to be, the worst roll is going to be stuff beyond normal range. Like if I rolled a 28 on my disadvantage and then like a 32 with the advantage, then the 32, obviously I'm going to find stuff, but the 28 as my disadvantage, that's going to allow me to see things potentially up to 10,000 miles away instead of within 1,000 miles. So this is a scaling system here that goes with all objects of sizes depending on how far away they are, noticing it with an orrery, noticing it with my bare eye, or being able to see details. So you want to close distance from 1 mile to the 500 foot or better 50 foot scale for you to make out any specific details on that pixie that you find just drifting through the wild space. When you get super close, you can make out all the details. But again, you want to notice these things earlier so you have more time to respond to what they are. So you can read through that and it'll make sense to you when you read it here. And let's see what some other goodies we have here. Here's a blank spot that we're going to need to fill with an illustration. And I don't know what that illustration is yet. If you have any ideas, I am very much open to it. But I need to actually rework this page because this is talking about predators falling into your gravity plane and pursuing you if you don't notice them, versus them tracking you. So this is looking at scanning for adventure when we were talking about that randomizer hex crawl sort of effect. And it turns out I need to adjust this page that we're here. Here, let's get rid of that, and we can scoot that over to sync up with the edge of the screen. Is as how we do. I hear we're talking about flotsam and drifting objects that you can run across, unnoticed encounters, closing distance between objects. You can pause and look at all this stuff. We'll probably eventually, we'll get into it. When we finish the document, we publish it, we'll do a page-by-page walkthrough to look at the various mechanics that we're introducing here. But object size and hit points, the light material, composite material, heavy material like boats are made out of. You got hollow material, which is like a human being or a ship. And then you have hybrid material like a Zorn would be a hybrid material where it's a creature, but it's made like a Trent could be a light material as opposed to a hybrid material or a hollow. Light would be like a tree. A Trent could be hybrid material, while like like a normal person would be hollow material, or a ship would be a hollow object. So they tend to have the same scaling hit points. And then we have hit points of objects versus creatures, the difference between hollow and hybrid and light, moderate, thick material here. We have colliding objects, also known as falling, that you can look through. I'm not walking through all the mechanics because that'll take... that's more focused than I want to right now. I'm just kind of flipping through this quick for you guys to take a look at. But again, you can go back and you pause on any of this stuff to see how it works. But falling scales with distance. As you can see here, the larger your object gets, the further it has to move to be able to take any kind of damage. And it talks about the smaller objects fall onto larger objects. If I throw a larger object and I hit it, technically, I'm making you fall at it if it hits you. So there, we got those mechanics there. That's stuff that allows us to throw asteroids at moons, or throw moons at planets, or throw planets into stars. Or if you're going to free fall, if your ship's out of control, you're going to smash into a planet at 10,000 miles per round. This is the kind of damage you can expect to deal yourself. 20d6 times 10 damage is going to be your maximum cap that you're going to deal as a ship up to 500 feet, slamming into the side of a planet. If you're going to maximum distance, if you fly at least 2,000 feet into a planet, you're going to take 20d6 times 10 damage. You can save for half. Stuff like that. Very, very simple, but that's scaling the damage of a ship. It's going to have like 400 some odd hit points, right? So 400 hit points, you can do 120. You could potentially do 1,200 damage to a 400 damage ship. You could potentially destroy your ship by flying 10,000 miles into the side of the moon. Yeah, you're probably going to wreck your ship. That's just logic. So deal with it. Don't free fall into a planet. Like that's rule number 1 in skydiving, right? Don't die. We got travel time in the astral sea. Astral tracking, finding objects in space and how long it takes to find that destination, depending on how familiar you are with the location. Time travel in the astral sea, so just drifting from location to location, and this is specifically finding something in the astral sea, like a location or an object that you may not know is there or not. We're looking at, and then when you find a location, a color pool in the astral sea, entering the wild space, where you come in from. Hey, Karen, how you doing? Then we're looking at researching the familiarity of an object. Here, I'll full screen this real quick for you. So you can look at researching familiarity with an object. Here's the different DCs to be able to notice things. Location of familiarity. Days spent at that location to become familiar with it, and then the research check that you get to make along with it. Like I viewed a location once, that means I was there for 1 day. It'll take, or if I want to research something in a library or discussions with a sage, it'll take 2d6 days of conversation with that sage to gain a level of familiarity with that location to be considered having seen it once. You can never become very familiar with a location through research. You actually have to go to that place and spend time there. Like if I want to go to Waterdeep, I'm going to have to spend time in Waterdeep to be very familiar with it. So if I want to go to Xeraxis space, I'm going to have to hang out in Xeraxis space and at the planets and jumping around from moon to moon for 100 days for me to become very familiar with Xeraxis space, right? If it's your hometown and you've lived there for years, you're very familiar with your hometown. So that's how that works. And then we're looking at traveling through wild space, mapping between worlds, system generators. This is the Zaraxis space system. This will be, we're working on the Realm space system. These aren't complete yet, but these are some of the things that I'm working on this week in the evening to finish these up. So once I finish that map and I finish this map here, which is the inner planes, see, we're building a point crawl system here with a system of using orbits in a wild space system using a square grid map so that you can use the same scaling square grids from 5 feet to 100 million miles per square. So we have that range, we have that 7 magnitudes of difference from 5 feet up to 100 million miles, which is the maximum distance a Spelljammer ship can fly per day. So you can have scales that are larger than 100 million miles, but when you're actually doing like a hex crawl or a point crawl system campaign in wild space, generally you're going to want to stay at 100 million miles or smaller in scale. This is actually, I actually have a typo here. This is going to actually be boop. Let's go to the actual text here. This should actually, I already have it adjusted, but this should actually be this is 50 million miles per square. So a Spelljammer ship can move 2 squares per day. 1, 2, 1, 2. That's a day. 1, 2. That's a day. 1, 2. There you go. It took 4 days to go from the central star to the 400 million mile mark. So we're going to be dropping planets here and showing some demonstrations about how this stuff works. And then we get to the back end, which is the page that we are working on today, the spherical gravity. And Karen, I know that you were curious, so I'll just show it off again here real quick, the finished illustration. And I'll have this on Twitter later on today. But we finished this up yesterday, so hit my goals of finishing this illustration. I'm happy with how it turned out, nice and gritty. Look at all that delicious grit, and that. Oh, it's just, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. Fun piece. So, got that done. Let's get back to work. Just a quick walkthrough. When we finish the exploration chapter, we'll then be going back to finish the combat chapter. I just wanted to take a break from combat stuff for a while just to keep my brain fresh, to keep me from burning out. Let's see. So we'll fill in that Faerun map. We'll figure that out. But for now, I want to work on this orbit stuff. We have this planet here. Let's go. What do we want to do? Do we want to grab a Saturn? Is that what we want to do? Let's go grab a Saturn. That's not a real word. Ref. Excuse me. Let's see. Planet. Rings. Oh wait, no. That's maps. So the idea here is we're talking about gravity fields and a bunch of small objects aligning into the same gravity plane as a collective. And hey, thanks, Karen. And so there's like I was talking at the intro here, the default assumption for where the gravity plane would be either like here or here, right? And so this is the actual gravity plane. But if you have rings like we have here, if you have rings around a planet, You could technically have up. You could have up like this and then up like this as well, because this is the gravity plane. The gravity plane actually is in bands like this. But thinking, although that is certainly a reality, and it is 100% true that you can do that if there's enough separation between each ring that they don't interrupt each other. Logically, if you have your gravity facing up and down like this, striated like a ladder, right? If you have it striated like a ladder instead of a field, then naturally all of the objects would fall to either this band, or it would naturally separate because of gravity, right? If I'm too close to the outer band, then the stuff inside of this grit is going to fall this way. If your grit between these two bands is too close to this one, it's going to fall to here. So it makes sense that you would have these degrees of separation. Like here, there's enough distance here between these two that you would have this gap. So this would be one and this would be the other, and the gravity would face in opposite directions. But I think this is why I play this stuff out, because I know these things are possible, but what do we actually want to depict, and how do we want to limit our scope so that people can grok the ideas without being overwhelmed? I think what we're seeing here with how Saturn is being presented, that this and this are two, and maybe this are like three distinct spaces. So it makes sense that we would limit this conversation to here and here, as opposed to attempting to explain this and this versus this and this, right? So I think we're going to limit ourselves in this conversation to just the obvious platter style plane. So when we go back in and we do our illustrations here, first I want to make sure that the text is reflecting this language. And if it doesn't, then we go back into our document here and we clean up the text that we're actually working on to make sure that it coincides. Like, for example, I made that spot check here on the previous page about depicting the wrong size of square, 50 million miles. I already fixed it over here. So we're updating this document. Like, we've hammered out all this text with our editor. Now that we know how the editor wants us to express the language in here, we can change the language because we understand the sentence structure, the preposition placement, how proper nouns are interacting with the document. You hire an editor to build a format for how you express your language. That's what a good editor does. Take this thing you're making up and express it that way. That way it will make it sound like 5e normally does. That's what you're hiring an editor for, is the expertise in being able to express the language the way that you intend to express it. That's what a good editor will do. There's mechanical editing, and then there's composition editing. The technical or like proofing, proofreading is technically what you call it. But a technical editor is someone who takes mechanics that you have and looks at how do those mechanics compare to what D&D or the game system that you're using. Like, what does 5e actually do, and what are you trying to do? How can you take what you're trying to do and make it sound more like 5e? Like, you can tell when someone has a technical editor by how far away from the ideas of 5e your project roams. Like, if you're using hexes instead of squares in a 5e game, your technical editor may be pushing back saying, hey, if you're planning on having combat at a scale larger than 5 feet using 5e mechanics, maybe you want to have this on a grid instead of a hex. You want to have square grid instead of a hex grid, because 5e specifically uses square grids to express combat. So if you're planning on your 500 or 50-foot scale combat to work as identically as combat at the 5-foot scale, you should use a square instead of a hex, because you're going to have less of a hurdle for people to understand the mechanics that you're trying to express. So that's a technical decision that had to be made about the game, and a technical editor pushes back against you on what decisions you're making to make sure that it's actually grooving with the system that you're building, which is one of the major roles that Ukulele Bard played in the development of this. He was my co-writer and companion in building this piece. he acted in truth more as a technical editor and pushback on the, like, I'd come up with text and he'd be like, this doesn't really say 5e. What we should do is blah, blah, blah. Or like these numbers aren't curving out properly. We need to shift our focus to X, Y, or Z instead. I won't bore you with all the details, but between Ukulele Bard and, which is Joseph Vargas, if you don't know him, and Adam Hancock, between the two of them, we got really strong technical editing as well as proofing and assistance in writing to be able to build this document. It's now been passed back to me to build all the visual assets, which is what we're doing. But while I go through that asset, since I am the project lead and creator of the book, then I have the ability to go in and make those alterations and just riff off of what Adam has. Or if I run into a problem I can't solve with what has already been given to me, I can then go back to Adam and Ukulele. It's like, hey, here's what I think, blah, blah, blah. And they can provide feedback as necessary, which they have done for over a year and a half, which is ridiculous. So God bless you, kids. Y'all treat me good. So clusters of objects within, let's go to the page that we're supposed to be looking at. We're off to it's Monday, guys. We're on a new picture. So, of course, we have a ramp up. Gravity fields. Clusters of objects without spherical gravity drifting together naturally align their gravity planes over time as they collide and shift about into layers far enough apart that the fields don't intersect, can drift parallel to each other. Examples of this phenomenon are rings orbiting planets and asteroid fields. Even if these clusters of objects objectively occupy spaces 10 miles or larger, these fields continue to have an up on both sides of the gravity plane. That's what we're attempting to express here. So we're going to start with the planet because that's where we start. And then once we have the planet done, then we'll work on the map to demonstrate how that plane works. So it should go okay. Enough talking, Kearney. Push some pixels. Come on, kid. The blue planet. Shade, dark, blurp, blurp. Darken to blue, light into red. Topsy bluesy. Bottom redsy. So shadows casting into blue. Highlights pulling into red. Where's the neutral point? There's going to be a neutral point. Nah, let's just go like that. And then we'll go in here in the red. Nah, hold on. Yeah. That'll work. All right. Wait. LeFou, I'm afraid I've been thinking. A dangerous pastime, I know. But this planet is blue and so is the border. But their value is only so-so. Alright, I'm going to let this guy something go because it's just wrecking on me. I can tell I'm already losing the audience. Let's do that. Let's just swirl this together a bit. You know what? Maybe I need to do this. Before I get ahead of myself, let's just see if I can create a circle that's large enough. 7, let's go 725. Fucking hey, that's ridiculous. Super cool. 725 it is. No, let's just up it a touch. Let's go 7. How's 750 feel? Oof, just right. It feels just right. So now we have a point of reference. I can actually lock the pixels. I'm using the very rare pixel lock. Well, actually, I'm not using a pixel lock. Let's go to there. That should be a pixel lock. Nope. Yeah, lock transparent pixels. Why? Something ain't working right. Prevent auto nesting. Lock transparent pixels. This is supposed to be allowing me. Oh my god, I'm such a dumbass. All right, I realized what I did wrong. I locked the wrong layer. Oh my god, I must be exhausted. Let's go find that color. All right, we're back on track. Let's go find that color. Very good. Very good. All right, now that we have pixels locked, you can see we can only actually paint on the pixels. So now that we have the planet the right size that we want, we can build it out. Welcome to Monday morning, folks. I'm gonna be like this all day. It certainly doesn't have to be smooth perfect. I don't need bands like that. I kind of want to have just kind of dropping a sphere in here. Then I want to do like some cloud circle-y stuff, stormagey things. But I definitely want to make sure that I've got the general gist of there's a shadow here, and then I can start using this as my base and then overlay clouds and stuff of different color. There we go. Chip, chop, chiree, chiroo, chirum. Yeah, I like that. So let's see. Let's I'm gonna make some random storm cloudage system stuff. I am incredibly excited about tomorrow because we've been for the Martial Powers project that I do development on Tuesdays. We've dived into the monk, and we haven't looked at monk in like maybe 4 months, 5 months. And so we're getting back into it, and the tech that we've developed for martial powers has expanded considerably since we had done so. So we've had some really great opportunities for us to mess around with new mechanics for key generation, which led us into some new quality of life improvements for both the Paladin, Ranger, as well as the Barbarian. So we're going to do kind of a recap lore dump for the various subclass martial classes in the martial powers system that we've been developing for the past year. We're going to do that tomorrow. And if time allows, after we go through the recap and the updates, we'll dive into more monk subclass conversion for the power system. But I am really, really excited about where we're taking the Paladin, the Ranger, the Barbarian, the Monk. All of it looks super fucking cool. I'm really excited to share that stuff with you. So if you want to see some of the design work that I do for 5e, like how I develop stuff, that's what the Tuesday dev stream is about, going through the mental process of creating new content. So you can like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notification when I'm going to be live tomorrow. You can also check out my playlist for the 5e game design for the Martial Powers playlist that I have here on my channel at YouTube/Phil Kearney. There we go. Tex, what's up? Hey, it would be interesting to see Uranus's color with Saturn's ring pattern. Would it? I don't know how well I'll be able to preserve it in the end, but let's look at Uranus. Top facts! Oh God, what a sharp blue. That's insane. I'm already using a blue, right? It never gets into the red, but I think we could probably... Okay, let's try this. I'll take a suggestion, sure. Karen, you've never steered me wrong, so... Oh, I'm into that. Okay. How's that feeling? Let's put a hot spot here. So what do you think? Is this hitting the spot for you? It's all, since I don't see any color, it's all just value to me. So the blues and lavender will stand out. Right on. I'm going to take your word on it. Lavender sounds like a color that vibes with what Wizards generally has going on with Spelljammer like that. Lavender, I don't know lavender. I'm assuming it's an off blue, since we're working in a blue motif here. But I'm guessing that vibes with Flash Gordon. Am I right in feeling like my gut is telling me that lavender to blue is like pink is to red, like it's a more feminine sort of take on the color as opposed to like industrial or military? Am I crazy there? There is lavender on the south end of the planet. Like this one? Is that lavender? Is that what we're talking about? Okay, it seems like I'm fairly on point. I gotta say, I like how that feels. It's got this cool glow to it that has a sort of heat feel, like a coolness to it. I don't actually see color, but I can occasionally catch a feeling of heat or coolness, like more towards the heat end of things. But I'm getting a jive off of it. I think I want to keep those clouds. How's that feeling? I'm going to pull that down. And then we're going to layer on another separate layer with a lighter amount of cloudage going on, like this. Yeah, I know it's not the same. I'm interested in having an earth cloud pattern. I'm cool with the color being whatever, but I like doing swirly cloud stuff like this. I just want to see how it plays out. There we go. Hey, timely time. Let's take a sip of coffee. Hopefully I didn't ruin it. Bear. Add more lavender to the south bottom. It may give a less earth appearance. Yeah, okay, I'm open. Nice. Thanks, Karen. I feel blessed to have folks so interested in offering advice about color because I honestly need it. I feel like I want to pull darker color here. And what I can do is manipulate the layers with the lighting. Like this one's being painted over the clouds currently, but I can, since it's a separate shadow, I can drop it underneath the clouds. Like here is probably a decent place to put it. Like that. Like that. Yeah, I think I'm pretty good with that. There. Nesbit, is that? I want to take sphere. Give it Tilt. Do I want to break frame or do I want to stay true to frame? I think the easiest answer here is let's delete that. Let's pull the whole thing. Away from the border a touch. Because I'm having a thought. I'm pushing these borders a lot in the exploration chapter. Like in the combat chapter, I'm very strict about not breaking frame. But in the exploration chapter, I'm noticing that this is 2 out of 2 illustrations that I have not been, I have not minded breaking the frame of the border, and I think that kind of goes along with the idea of what exploration is in the first place. So I think I'm kind of okay with it. It's certainly fun. Considering you're exploring space, yeah. The illustration informs the narrative. Kind of happy about that. Not complaining. Now I'm just going to be cheeky. I don't know if this is probably not a good idea, but I wanted to mess with it anyway. Because the idea's been kind of floating around in my head. This is the first opportunity I've really had to play with it, so... probably not the right piece to truly execute it. But I can imply it with my fade. There we go. There we go. Nice. Smudge, smudge, smudge. Smudge, 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 smudge. This is what we do. Smudge, smudge, smudge. So much smudge. Smudge, smudge, smudge. I don't know what tool I use more, the paintbrush or the smudge tool, honestly. Something like that. Oh man, that really kind of pops out, huh? That's pretty cool. Just being a perfectionist here. There we go. Where'd you go? Thank you. Drop the strength of this down to 20 something, 30. The numbers that run across the top of the keyboard, 1 to 0. 1 is 10%, 0 is 100%, kind of like with percentile dice in D&D, right? But the point is that I'm not really looking at my keyboard when I'm hitting hotkeys, and like you can see up here, the strength, it's flipping around. Like if I wait, there, if I wait a few seconds, then when I press a button, it just clicks it over to the 10s. Like there, I just switched it to 90. There I switched it to 40. But if I hit 2 buttons at the same time, it'll give it an odd percentage, like 40, like, what is that, like 78? But I'm not really looking at my keyboard. A lot of times when I'm hitting smudge, I'm just kind of reflexively throwing out my finger and it's hitting a button. And I'm not really necessarily sure which one I'm pressing, but it's in the neighborhood. Like that's going to be like 30 something, and it's 40. But that's close enough. But when I'm actually using the smudge tool, I can feel how responsive the pixels are when I look at them. It translates almost into a motor feeling of drag on my pen. Like I'm using the pen and it's not pushing pixels as much as I think it should. So then I can look up, it's like, oh, we're at 40 as opposed to like, say, 60, which I can push the pixels much easier. Or it's like, I'm pushing those pixels too easy. I need it to diffuse a little bit. I know that I need to move further down the number scale, but I'm never actually looking at what numbers I'm pressing. I'm just kind of letting the reflexes punch the buttons that it wants to punch at the time. That doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's just something I noticed that I thought I'd share since we have, since people are interested in that kind of stuff. Like half of my audience is technically people that are interested in artwork. And the other half are people that are D&D enthusiasts. It seems like there's a neat little fusion between the two of D&D enthusiasts that like to do art. They're known to happen occasionally. So I think that's where my true core audience is at. People that like to draw D&D stuff. Who knows? Sup? Oh, hey, Meta. Other stuff, I don't really know what you're doing, but I keep seeing your streams in my recommendation, and I'm loving what I'm seeing. Keep going. Hey, thanks a lot. Yeah, so I guess hey, you're down in the corner, so I don't see you a lot. So thanks a lot for being here, Meta. Appreciate it. Yeah, I design D&D books. I illustrate them, and then I publish them online. If you tolerate going through my intro spiel, I kind of walk you through the different stuff that I've made. This is the the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration book that we've been streaming here for the past, well, we're at episode 258 right now, regardless of what the title says down below. I have a typo there, but this is the 107-page document that I've created. The first 87, as soon as it finishes pinwheeling on us. Thank you. So the first 87 pages of this are providing Spelljammer ship vehicle combat mechanics that use 5e combat rules that you already know at the 5-foot scale and blows them out to the 50 and 500-foot scale, and then further dives into exploration at the 100, the 10-mile, 100-mile, up to 100 million miles. So the first 87 pages is basically like ground physics of how like space works in fantasy space. And then the back 20 pages, 88 through 107, is using all of those new physics and combat mechanics, and how would Light of Xeraxis be different if we used those. So it's kind of Light of Xeraxis becomes a proof of concept that these mechanics that we're using actually work and are fun by presenting and rebuilding the scenarios. So right now we've been spending all the time building tokens, maps, as well as page illustrations for the document. And as they get completed, once they're all done, then we'll go through a sweep and we'll start filling in all these gaps with the illustrations that we've made. And when we seal it up into a PDF, we'll publish it on DMsGuild, like all the other stuff I have linked down below, and it'll have an extensive preview so you can read through all the stuff before you buy it. But it'll also have 72 tokens and 8 maps, all the ships at the 5-foot, 50-foot, 500-foot scale, all the creatures that are able to attack your ship, like at the 50 and 500-foot scale, as well as all the NPCs that you encounter in Light of Xeraxis. Those are all, we built those like back at like episode 50 through 120, I think. So you can see the creation of all those tokens, and we've been using those tokens in our asset production. As we go through the book, if we need to illustrate ship movement and combat, then we can use the tokens that we built on the maps that we built, so that if you buy the product and you get the zip file, you'll open it up, you'll see all the tokens and all the maps that we're using actually in the book. So it becomes a self-contained document that you can use to reference to be able to run your own combat stuff if you wanted. Anyway, that's the ideas of it. Yep, this is for 5e. Yeah, it's for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. But it's just basic D20 mechanics. So it works with 3rd edition. It works with Pathfinder 1 and 2. It works with Mass Effect, Star Wars D20. It works with all of it. The basic scaling concepts and the D20 dice roll DC. It works with anything that rolls a DC, add up results, high number wins. This works with all those, more or less. Some like you'll have to jig the action economy a little bit if you're going to use Pathfinder 2nd edition with it or Starfinder, but for the most part it works. Like all the like if you're a 5e enthusiast, all the action economy that we use here is 5e, depending like if you're the pilot or you're a siege commander ordering siege crews to fire siege weapons. Squadron commanders control multiple ships at the same time, and a support character is basically using their action economy to use the assist action or help your teams in other ways. And you can freely float between these different roles. So like if you're on a fighter ship, like an open deck skiff with a gun on it, you can be the pilot. You could also be the siege commander, and you can use your own character's action economy to like cast a spell or fire an arrow at somebody or something between moving the ship and making attacks with it. But it uses all the same action economy that people already know in 5th edition and just scales out to the 50 and the 500 foot scale. So, but I talk about that a lot. There was actually episode 217, 225, and 227, I believe. It's something like that. Anyway. Are there, and what are the, oh my god, for Dungeons and Dragons? Holy, well, if you don't know D&D at all, then a lot of my conversations are relevant. There's, D&D's gone all the way back to 1978, I believe, is the first edition. There's technically, there's the original box sets of D&D, then there's the AD&D conversion to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, then there's a 2nd edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Then it becomes just D&D again, but they call it 3rd edition, and then there's 4th edition, and then 5th edition came out 10 years ago, and now they're rebuilding 5th edition into like a modified 5.5. So there's technically 6 editions, even though they only call it 5th. Because lore is convoluted. And there's a considerable amount of difference over the years. The basic a lot of it's changed. It's in the past 50 years, it's evolved a lot. Let's see. Oh yeah, right now we're doing rings. So let's go with rings. But 5th edition has a very vibrant third party or like homebrew community that amateurs like myself create ideas hinging on the concepts that are built inside of Dungeons and Dragons and expand on or create variants of it. Like if you have a dragon as a monster, there's like 30 different types of dragons that exist inside the game, but people are always creating new types of dragons beyond that because, you know, it's just a creature, right? Or like a goblin or an orc is a common term that people know from Lord of the Rings. But like an orc shaman can be completely different from a goblin shaman. But if you don't have a shaman, you can create one. You can give it rules about how it acts and what it can do to opponents and like how it engages with stuff. Blah, 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 blah. This is going to be interesting, creating these rings, because right now I'm freehanding this arc. Wop wop wop. Let's yeah, I want to start off with a darker color so it stands out against the background better. So Spelljammer is basically like, if you've seen Treasure Planet, It's basically that. Spelljammer came out in 1993. It's basically pirates in space is basically what it boils down to. But if you've seen Treasure Planet, that's probably the best analogy out there for what is Spelljammer. It's if you made a game, if Treasure Planet was a game, it would be Spelljammer, and it's a derivative or a subgenre of Dungeons and Dragons in general. D&D is high fantasy, Lord of the Rings or King Arthur and Excalibur. Game of Thrones is low fantasy. There's some magic, but it's no one really expects to have any of it. If you have magic, you're feared because people don't understand you. As opposed to the Dungeons and Dragons movie that just recently came out with Chris Pines. That's a fucking funny movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it, it's real. It's the level of, I would say I'd say it's about equivalent to the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It's the same level of shenanigans, silliness, and adventure. It has that sort of a feel to it. But in generic default fantasy worlds, you can literally just trip over magic items that allow you to teleport at will. That's the level of high fantasy that you can anticipate in some D&D games. And depending on how you want your world to go, you can ratchet it back so that it has minimal magic, like Game of Thrones, but that's an aesthetic choice. The rules are assuming that you're steeped in just almost endless magic, and that the characters are used to that reality and adapt accordingly. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Well, amateur as in I don't have, so here's the difference between amateur and professional publishers. Amateurs, for the most part, there's exceptions to this, but just take this with a grain of salt. The generalization, the gist here is an amateur creates a thing and then hopes people pay attention that you made it and buy it because it's good. As opposed to professional work is you generally have an audience that's going to buy your stuff because they already believe in you, and you have enough capital that you can afford to make the book without having to worry about a side hustle, right? I've got a full-time day job and I do this in my spare time. That's what makes me an amateur. The amount of money that I create from making books doesn't allow me to quit my job and just make books full time. That would be professional, right? I'm an amateur freelance illustrator. I can get paid $700 to $1,000 for a book cover, but I don't do it consistently enough, often enough that I can quit my day job, and that's my sole source of income. I certainly aspire to getting to a place where, if I announce a Kickstarter, that I immediately have 500 people buy it. And so that's going to give me, $20 a book, 500 people. That's only $10,000, right? I better be able to make that book in 2 months. Otherwise, I'm going to have to keep my day job because I live in Seattle, where the cost of living is basically $85,000 if you want to live alone. Most median households, most households with two people working in Seattle, is about $150,000 a year, and single people live alone is about, like I just said, $85,000 a year. So if I'm not capable of producing $85,000 of revenue off of books and artwork, then I either need to move to, I don't know, not Singapore, maybe Brazil, where household income is more like $20,000 a year, or I need to keep a day job and build and be patient so I can get to the point where I can realistically quit. But that's, it's not a sprint. The slower you move and the more careful you are about what you do, the more integrity you have, the less compromise you have to make, the more you can quit your job on your own terms. So yes, I am still very much an amateur, even though I'm building on 107-page book, which is, yes, it's taken me over a year to make it. I've been streaming this for 15 months now. It would have been done a lot faster if I didn't insist on creating all the tokens myself and creating all the page art myself. I don't use AI. I don't outsource my art. I'm capable of building the art myself. So that's what I do. It's kind of my shtick. But I've only been streaming. This is only my second year streaming. So, in the first year, I only streamed for like maybe 50 hours in the year. And so I've only really got a year worth of... well, I think am I 2 years now? Maybe I got 2 years of streaming under my belt. Something like that. If it was easy, everyone would do it. And it wouldn't be worth it. I originally started streaming just to for two reasons. One, because the size of these projects is so huge, and painting is such a solitary project that if I'm going to dive into a year-long project, that means I'm not going to be basically interacting with people for a year outside of the bare minimum necessary for like my job and stuff. Because if I'm going to get the book done, I got to get home and get the fucking work, right? So streaming allows me an opportunity to engage and interact with people and at least have some sort of a parasocial relationship with people while I'm trapped at my easel. Because art is intrinsically, unless you're even actors that are running a script aren't directly engaging with the audience. Even improvised comedian troupes aren't really interacting with their community. They're just taking prompts from the audience and then riffing off of the prepared content. And how do their ideas curve into what we have prepared? Art does not directly engage with an audience. So it's always lonely, and the bigger the project, the more lonely you're going to get. It's a real risk. It's why a lot of people aren't willing to create these things, because the amount of time and energy and focus and endurance that it takes is grueling. So streaming like this is a way to be able to cheat in emotional fulfillment of being able to interact with people while still being productive and pushing pixels all the time. And then off screen, since I know I'm going to come back tomorrow and keep painting, when I finish a page on my own, because I do artwork here, but I do a lot of the technical work like diagrams and rigging and streaming things, all that sort of more boring administrative grind work I do off screen in the evenings, because I only stream so much a week. But I like to stream in the morning because I haven't been weighed down by my day yet, but a lot of times I'm sleepy. Only got a few minutes left today, by the way. So I'm going to take this here and drop this back here like that. It's a start. I see some text down in the corner. Hold on, I'll catch up with you in a second. Yeah, this is far from perfect. What's up? Hey, Zona, how you doing? Yeah, thanks, Matt. You're too kind. The muse can keep your company when you aren't here to watch. Yes, she can, and she does. She's more like a task mistress than anything else. She's I have a proverbial Greek muse that lives inside of my heart, and she whispers in my head what to do next. And the more I listen to what she says, generally the happier I am. But she's been steering me right for quite some time now, so... We do love her. Let's do that. But I spent a lot of time alone to be able to cultivate hearing that voice. They don't say it's schizophrenia. I haven't been diagnosed with it. But yeah, I encourage everyone to develop a really intimate relationship with their intuition. There, that's feeling pretty good. Nice job. Nice job. So we do painting like this Monday through Friday in the mornings for about 100 minutes, 80 to 100 minutes typically. We're going to be done here probably about a minute, and I'm going to sign out so I can go to my day job. Mondays and Thursday nights, including tonight's, we do cartography for one of the adventures that we're creating. So folks can check back in about 12 hours. I'll be back on doing painting this evening for the cartography. So that's Mondays and Thursdays. Saturday mornings, I do commissions. And if I don't have a commission currently, then I will do personal projects and develop my own stuff on the side. On Tuesdays, we do the martial power system, which is new mechanics for sword, swinging swords and fighters and barbarians and stuff like that, using non-spell magic to boost their effects. And we have some new mechanics that we're developing for that, and we'll be playtesting that in the new year. And then I think that's pretty much all I got going on right now. The Spelljammer project, the Eberron project, and the Martial Powers project. We're going to be playtesting Martial Powers with volunteers. And my home table, we just hit level 20 in our campaign. So we are circling the drain to being done with that campaign and starting a new one, which is going to be a Spelljammer campaign where the team are playing asteroid miners in the Eberron tiers of Sybaris, the crystals that orbit the planet. The story is that now they have Spelljammer ships, they can go into orbit and start harvesting those sweet, sweet crystals. But that is pissing off extraplanar psychic monsters that use that crystal resonance to enter reality. So by mining the crystals, it closes their door, which pisses them off. So the team is going to have to deal with extraplanar threats, angry that they are killing their pipe. So that'll be an interesting campaign. We're going to build components for the Spelljammer campaign here live, probably in spare time. We'll make time for that, and I'll announce when we do that. And we'll also be building the Spelljammer playtest campaign components. We'll be building them here on stream as well, and I'll announce times when I'm doing that, but you'll see me developing a game. Since I run level 1 to 20 campaigns about every 200 hours of table time, I know that I'm in the upper 5% of tables that run campaigns above 15th level, so I know there's at least some interest in how I put games together that can sustain 20 levels over 200 hours. It's kind of rare. Like I said, only 5% of the games actually do that. but I've been doing this for 30 some odd years, so I've got the skill and the ability to do it. So I kind of have a responsibility to do it, because if I stop doing it, then that's one less person out in that 5%. That's you know, pushing that high level of play. I kind of need to keep doing it. But my timer popped, so I'm just waiting for the muse to let me go. She gets kind of earnest about hitting that curve. There you go, baby. Oh yeah, thanks, sweetie. There you go. Thank you, darling. That's starting to look proper. I'm gonna have to mess with the perspective a little bit, but so far I'm pretty happy with it. We can take that and this and this. It's not perfect. The angle's off for sure. But the question is the angle off up here? Or in here? Or is it both? I'm liking this cloud effect we have going on back here too. There. All right, we're going to go ahead and stop here for now. I will, though. So we're going to have to end up doing a transparency of this. Once we get this curve right, we're going to do a transparency. And then we'll start adding in actual, like, thicker grit. But this is part of the process. So this is where it begins. So we're going to continue this. The disk copy exploration was changed since you last opened and saved it. Do you want to save it anyway? Okay. Okay. Cool. Yep, that's it. Let me catch up on stuff. Yeah, thanks a lot, Karen. And thanks, Zona. So I will not be right on, Karen. Karen, I never assume you'll be here. You're God bless you for even showing up at all. Thank you a lot for your color advice. It's really appreciated. Yep, there we go. So I'm out. I'll be back in 12 hours. I'll catch you guys then. Thanks a lot.